This past Sunday, I spent my afternoon putting up a tent, which is not so unique to me because I know that there were many other folks here and in this congregation who were doing the same thing on Sunday, putting up a tent. But while I was putting up that tent, I was running through some words I was going to say later that evening in another tent. I was in one moment building a sukkah while building a speech for a chuppah. And while I was doing so, it dawned on me for the first time that we Jews love tents. Some of us. Depending on the tent. There's an asterisk that comes with what that tent is, for sure. A month and a half ago, we had an event to mark the beginning of Elul for our congregational women, and it was called Red Tent. Throughout Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, our playground services were filled with singing, dancing, drumming, meditating, and stretching our bodies, our minds, and our hearts, all under tents. And when we walk into synagogue, the prayer that we are supposed to say upon entering the doors, Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. Historically and anthropologically, that makes sense. We Jews, after all, were traditionally a nomadic people. We were shepherds and farmers, a people whose travels were determined by rainfall and available patches of fertile land for grazing and growing some fruits and vegetables. But of course, we know that the most defining moments of our history as a people were the wanderings we entered into when we thought that we were done wandering, when we thought we were home, established, ready to make not just spiritual but physical roots and to stay in place. The travels made not for agricultural purposes but through force or out of necessity. Exile, destruction, persecution, a very different kind of wandering. When we wander not on our own volition, the wandering stays with us in a different way. And though I think a big part of what we celebrate during this holiday of Sukkot is our connection to the land, to the soil, to nature, I think the undercurrent that makes this day and these days so powerful and so meaningful is one of prideful defiance. That we dwell in Sukkot not just to remember the Ananei Kavod, the clouds of glory that followed our ancestors throughout the Midbar, not just to remember the Mishkan or the tents of our biblical patriarchs and matriarchs, but to remember that through our long, incredible history, we have journeyed together. And no matter where we are, and no matter what we have been through, we put up our tents, our Sukkot, our chuppot, our synagogues, and we celebrate. That may sound like a pretty simple observation, and maybe it is, but it's also one we still need to remember, that we need to celebrate, because sometimes the most important Torah, like Rabbi Starr said yesterday, is simply recognizing the blessings that surround us. And the fact that we are here in Michigan, building Sukkot in Huntington Woods, signing Ketubot in Rochester, davening together in Southfield, it's a remarkable blessing. It's a beautiful blessing. On Sunday, I started my afternoon, I have to admit, stressed out, exhausted, and if I'm being completely honest, pretty grumpy that I was building a sukkah and cleaning up the backyard rather than watching football or going out and about with my family. I'll admit it. But when that connection clicked, that I was building a tent while preparing to go and stand under a different tent, I smiled. And I think for the first time fully realized why we sing that song every morning. That afternoon, I got to spend time outside with Meredith, Elior, and my father-in-law, doing a mitzvah. And that evening, I got to stand under a chuppah with a couple who were taking the opportunity in the short period of time between Yom Kippur and Sukkot to legally and ritualistically bind their lives forever together, to start construction on a tent called the Jewish home and the Jewish family. And so I have to say that if the Rabbi from Rabbi Starr's story yesterday were to ask me how I'm doing today, I think I'd say I'm feeling pretty good. And if he asked me why, I think I'd sing back to him. Ma tovu, o alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. How lovely are our tents. How incredibly lovely are our tents. As we celebrate this holiday of Sukkot together, I wish you a Chag Sameach, a good Yantif. We'll continue